to you, all our viewers and our listeners. Welcome to our podcast, the PHA4GE Podcast, otherwise also known as Public Health Alliance for Genomic Epidemiology. Today, I'm sitting with Tracey, Dr. Calvert-Joshua, and she's one of the interesting women in our consortium. Today, we're also going to record the first session of a 3-part series where we are going to be exploring more on women in science. So, Tracey, welcome, and we're so happy to have you now.
Thank you. Happy to be a part of the podcast. Hi, everyone.
Nice. So, I guess many people always ask this question, but it is actually going to be the first one. What inspired you to pursue a career in science?
I think that's not a really straightforward answer. It's not linear. I think for as long as I can remember, I only know that I was curious about things. So I would ask the usual questions about, does everybody, when they say the sky is blue, see the same thing? All kinds of questions about what babies perceive in the stomach, those type of things. And I think I was just always philosophical about everything. And then I think it was just natural because people always used to say, you ask so many questions. And science was the only place where people encouraged the questions. So I think I found that safe space there. And I think, that's probably how I ended up. But to tell you that was the first thing I thought of, I think it was probably more philosophy that I was chasing. And only now to realize that actually most of the scientists like Einstein, whatever, they actually were philosophers and scientists. And the whole university curriculum was actually initially, what is it called? The MBA?
Masters in
Humanities.
Oh, yes.
Humanities was actually how universities were shaped, and science and all of that was a part of it. So I don't know if that helps, but it definitely wasn't linear. At one stage, it was a teacher, then it was a geologist, then it was virology, dietetics. Even now, it's everything.
Wow, that's a wide range of interests.
Everything is science to me.
Oh, nice. And then also now, when I look at it on how everything is science to you, science is quite broad, and here you've landed yourself to become a bioinformatician. So what really made you focus to that space of just saying that, okay, I'm moving to bioinformatics and not necessarily another form of science?
It wasn't even inspirational. I think I was running away from lab work because I realized I liked science and I thought I liked all kinds of science, but I realized that the restrictions, so actually the word focus probably isn't the best word to use because it was more I was trying to look for something that was multidisciplinary, where I could touch on, math was my favorite subject at school, I could touch on math, I could touch on some of the biological questions, I could think about things logically. And so I was running from lab work, and this option opened up, and it wasn't something that I even knew existed. I didn't know when I started studying that there was something like bioinformatics, and it opened up and I ended up here, and I'm very happy to be here.
Nice. So good to hear that. And I do presume also that as you have been in this field of bioinformatics, you faced a number of challenges, even with the interest you had in the different type of subjects that you've had to go through in doing all the theoretical work that you had to do. Now tell me, what could have been these challenges that you faced?
I wish I had a very inspirational answer. I think that, look, there were a lot of delays that were out of my hands, and I think more than anything, I think that you need to listen to yourself. I think a lot of people discouraged me from pursuing, firstly, an honors. They said it's going to be very difficult. Don't pursue a master's, it's going to be very difficult. By the time I got to PhD, I was like, oh, you know what, maybe what's difficult to other people is easy to me, arrogantly. So I went into the PhD, and I can tell you that the challenges were definitely not in the science space. It was more challenges that I needed to, I learned more about myself, how I handle stress, how I handle delays, how to navigate bottlenecks. The skills, the accessory skills that I learned from doing the PhD And the soft skills were actually something I think that I couldn't have picked up by doing some of the other. I know this is not specifically asking about a PhD, but I ended up doing that, and I realized that you do learn. Those were the challenges I didn't anticipate. You learn a lot about the non-science of scientific part of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I so much like that response, because when I look at it, you're just one resilient woman. I mean, just having to navigate one hurdle after the other. It's a difficult thing to complete just a normal undergrad degree, and here you pursued all the way to a PhD. So that is really, really quite a great achievement that I applaud you on.
Thank you.
And when I look at it now, yes, you have become resilient, but it's something that I'm thinking of. How then did you really overcome all those hurdles? Because for you right now, it seems like it's something that you really had a breeze on.
Can I say my childhood? No. I think I was always on the sideline. Like I said, I was never just interested in science. So I was always reading up about metaphysics and the power of the mind and all of it. And I think that stood me in good stead, because I had already learned so much about emotional regulation and about how the brain can trick you and how you are not your thoughts and all of those things. And that actually tapping into that on the side as a hobby actually helped a lot with, I didn't know at the time that it was something I needed to do. Maybe on a subconscious level, I understood, and that's why I pursued those stuff. But I think that's what helped a lot. I nearly quit my PhD. I wrote it actually in my foreword. Because of all the delays. I constantly was done with work, and then there would be delays I could have finished it in under 3 years.
Yes.
And it ended up being 7 years because of all the delays that happened. And I was like, I don't know if I can. Every time I would get to the end of the tunnel and see the light, I realized the tunnel got longer. And by the third time, my brain was like, maybe it's long again, and you think it's the end of the tunnel. And so if it wasn't for Alan Christoffels, my supervisor then, that actually encouraged me and told me more about also the other skills that you learn, and that's what I need to focus on, and encourage me in that way, I probably would have. I don't quit anything.
Oh, yes.
I was challenged by the fact that this would have been the first thing I ever quit in my life, and I'm glad I didn't.
Oh, wow. I am quite inspired as well, because this is an issue about having a good mental state that pushed you through everything that you were doing. And again, a strong support system, so to say, because you had a person who had a mentor to help you throughout the journey. And it's not easy for so many people, but I take it that these are gems that we can actually take and help each and every other person who could be on the same journey, isn't it?
I think pick your supervisor well, just like you pick your marriage partner. Pick your supervisor. It's one of the few things you can choose. Do your proper homework and see if that person's personality, work ethic, network, whatever fits you. Because a lot of people, even in the workspace, they quit because of a bad boss and not so much because of the work. So,
yes. Yeah. So just exploring more also on that concept, what then could be some advice that you can give to young women who are entering into this field?
Look, I can only speak from my own experience, but I'm gonna try and be broader, right? And not just talk about this in the context of science, because again, I can't speak for science when I have so many different interests. I think that you can't listen to your, I hope this is not going to offend anyone, but you can't always follow your parents' advice. I spoke to somebody about that sitting here. You can't always follow your parents, you can't always, because you have to, and this comes back to again the other side of you that's not a scientist. I think a lot of the times people think being a scientist is about being logical, and I get that, but there's a side of you that feels things through, and you have to learn about that intuitive side of you if you want to make informed decisions. Some things are just going to feel right or feel wrong, that is your subconscious that knows way beyond all the logic that you know, or knows how to quickly bring together all of the knowledge that you already have. And I think that you need to sometimes, when something feels like it's not a good fit, even if everything else says this is the formula that you need to follow, you need to feel your way through. And I think sometimes that learning what feels right, if something feels like it's going to be a huge burden and it's going to be a heavy weight to carry, and you just cannot feel that there's anything good that will come out of it, it's probably not for you. There's got to be at least something about it that feels good, that makes you want to, I'm not saying chase a feeling, I'm saying chase a feeling of, chase peace more than anything, not excitement or whatever.
Yes.
But there's got to be something that resonates with you and says it feels right. That's not a scientific answer, I know.
Yeah.
But that is, I think, for the most part, we forget that as human beings, we are emotional, mental, we've got all these facets to ourselves, and we need to tap into most of that to make good decisions.
Yeah, that sounds really deep when I look at it, because if I look at it also coming back from a cultural perspective, many a times the advice that people get when they are young has a great influence on their lives. And if you are to get advice from a trusted individual who could be your parent, a person who could be a close friend, it shapes who you are. But from what I'm hearing now, sometimes you might need to really distill yourself from all that advice and have your own values to say that this is what I want, and you go for it.
You know, I actually just remembered something now that you were talking. I'm sorry if I'm keeping all of you guys very long. The people
Not
here
at
know
all.
I have
We
a
all
long
want to hear
tongue.
it. Let's hear it.
But when I was going to study medicine at UCT, and that all went well, and then at the last minute, I decided not to. My dad was upset. I mean, my dad, if you've ever had, my dad walked off, and I had to run after him. He didn't care where. He was so angry because I didn't pursue it. But I didn't feel right. I didn't feel like it was a fit for me, because I like my free time, and you know what it's like when you... And so I took a gap year, which I'm not encouraging, I'm just saying it works for me. Again, feel your way. But I took that space and I figured out where I needed to be. And I actually wanted to then pursue computer science. Then I applied for that and I got in for that too. But then it still didn't feel right. Anyway, I took a few other detours, ended up studying biotechnology. And my dad said, "Why are you studying that? You should have gone into water science." But I don't... And now, not realizing, I still followed. And sometimes what I'm saying is, sometimes your parents give you advice and you look like you're going against their advice. But you actually end up in the same path, because now I am doing something in the public health side of things, but I'm also doing water science related things. And that initial, when I was struggling, am I doing computer science or not? And then I did biotech. And then I still ended up doing programming anyway.
Yes.
So it kind of came together. Me thinking I was confused about what I wanted to do, but I ended up pursuing what was right at the time, and actually realized that all of them were what I needed to do.
Oh, yes.
And they came together.
Ah, nice. And also, it seems it's moving out from that traditional perspective where if somebody is within the science space, you had to be a medical doctor. But there are so many other avenues, and people are helping out people in so many different ways. So I guess also this is just a lesson for so many as well, that there could be traditional ways where things are done, but even if you challenge the status quo, you can still get to be somebody who is classified as successful. But again, it gets back to yourself. Are you having peace? And that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I heard also you mentioning a bit about you working on a little bit of public health and also on water-related issues. Maybe let's tap into what your projects are, or maybe the work that you've done. Can you just maybe share a bit on that?
You mean with PHA4GE or?
Yes, so particularly with PHA4GE, or also just some projects that you've just worked in you being a bioinformatician.
Okay, so As a bioinformatician, I think predominantly I could half it into partly cancer research.
Okay.
And then the other half was pathogens. So working in the disease space and trying to figure out how we approach either discovering how to build these diagnostic kits, discovering what should be what they call the markers or the biomarkers that would allow us to identify whether you have a disease or not. And then also then moving into how does that translate into designing drugs, medicines for these different diseases. And then on the PHA4GE side, I think it's very broad. I mean, if you go on our website, you'll see so many different projects people are involved in. It's all mostly in the disease side of things, but it's about how do we approach disease? Do we approach it through studying the water spaces, the environmental spaces, and getting from that spaces these samples that they get analyzed and tell us what is happening in the community, or do we get it straight from the patient? So it's got we are dealing at PHA4GE with so many that we've got cholera, malaria, mpox, HIV, SARS-CoV-2, of course. You can see on our website we've got a whole bunch of different diseases we are interested in all outbreaks.
Nice. And that is speaking a lot to the surveillance work that is happening. But apart from this as well, I would even want to understand more what then could be exciting about working with PHA4GE, despite you just focusing perhaps on the wastewater surveillance that you're speaking about and the other projects that could be there relating to water, such as cholera. What other aspects can we say that PHA4GE is actually a good space that you're working in?
I think, again, as a scientist, it may not be, and especially as a scientist in the disease side of things, you may want me to say it's exciting to work with the bacteria and the viruses, which is true, but I think the people are probably because sometimes it's viewing the world through the lens of the people and what inspires those people to be who they are and to focus on what they focus on. That makes it exciting. So we have groups of people who are focused predominantly on training. They love seeing the spark in people's eyes when they learn something new. And watching them engaged in that work of passion is exciting. Watching people being driven by the need of people dying and saying, I cannot watch people die without stepping in. I'm going to be on the field collecting the samples, helping them. It's those, and then obviously within PHA4GE, within the secretariat, we have so many different personality types and whatever, and having to learn myself even as a self-proclaimed non-diplomatic person, and I think I have to. The reason why I'm here is also to learn to work with these different personalities. I can be rigid, and talk about soft skills before, and I think I'm here also to learn. My one colleague Jamie told me once that you need to. It's good to get a message across, but you also have to learn how to be diplomatic about it. And I often challenge him that they as men need to speak out more directly, but I think I also need to learn the diplomatics. In fact, Morgan, my other colleague, even told me yesterday that diplomacy is maybe not my strong side. So, I mean, that's a long answer to what you say, to what you asked, but I think the people have been exciting to work with.
Yeah. And it's shaping you again, shaping and reshaping you in terms of how you can be a better Dr. Calvert-Joshua.
Better scientist.
A better scientist as well. Nice. I guess also we're just like running out of time, but maybe just to check on some issues that are not necessarily your professional work. If I'm to hang out with you, Tracey, what are the hobbies that you like? And what activities maybe do you enjoy?
They change all the time.
Oh my goodness.
But at the moment it's metaphysics. Well, for the past couple of years it's been metaphysics. I think it's always been metaphysics actually. You know what? I come from a spiritual background and I've hated the unknown. I like to understand things, and I think science again was a way to bridge the gap between what is classified as a miracle or as something supernatural to the spiritual community and trying to bridge that gap to trying to understand it, because we know that things like flying and fire and all of that must have been a miracle at some stage. Let's even take disease. People used to think you were, God smote you and it was a demon that attacked you, and now we understand that those are actually viruses. And I know it's not the one germ theory thing, but in most cases we can pin it to it's this virus and this disease and how it interacted with the host. So I think I've always been drawn to the metaphysical side of things, which is using physics and all of that to understand the unknown.
Oh, wow. That is a very interesting hobby. I would think that maybe it would have been baking or maybe just doing your nails. Well, I've been so feminine, but that's not even any of my hobbies as well.
I like to eat what is baked.
Not even you. Oh, well. Yes, but that's very interesting. And I would say that thank you so much for your time, Tracey.
Thank you for the interview.
It was so much interesting to know who you are.
Thank you.
And also now to our viewers, thank you so much for this. We have just come to the end of our first podcast. But again, do check our website, PHA4GE.org. Thank you.
PHA with a 4.
Oh, yes. PHA with a 4.